all know the Ultimate Ninja series. It had 5 games on the PS2 and is still releasing a ton of games even to this day. But there was another series released on the PS2 that was completely overshadowed, Uzumaki Chronicles. Let's shine a spotlight on this overlooked series and see if the games are hidden gems, or if nostalgia is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Uzumaki Chronicles does not have much of a story to it. You're mostly going around doing side missions until you get close to the end, and it focuses on Orochimaru doing experiments. Even then, it was still nice to see Naruto going around doing missions that help the people, like delivering supplies to this one person who was nice to him, or the lady who comes asking Naruto to protect her expensive vases but plotting to get it destroyed for the insurance money. It's not just in-game cutscenes, as the game has a few CGI ones that sure bring back memories of early CGI. One odd thing was these wall of text the game has from time to time. Instead of showing you what happens, it just tells you. I thought their budget ran out and this was their best solution, but what actually happened was the English dub of the show made them cut content. It's an odd statement, but when you compare this game with the Japanese version, there are a lot more cutscenes in the Japanese one. The reason for this change is because the English dub of the anime was still in the 3rd Chunin exam when this game came out, but the game originally takes place after the Chunin exam, with Naruto already getting Tsunade to come back to the village. Since the show had not yet caught up to the original game's story point, they pushed the time this game takes place earlier. Therefore, they had to remove any cutscenes of Shikamaru with his tuning vest and remade his model without it, and just completely removed Tsunade since she was not yet a character in the show. So, when you're in the Hokage's office, it's empty. It does impact the game since you're missing a good amount of the cutscenes. Not sure I've ever seen a game get cut to not spoil a show. What about the gameplay? This game is a 3D beat 'em up. You have a light and heavy button to attack enemies. You can mix them to do different combos. It's a simple system, and it works fine. But one issue I did have was just fighting groups of enemies. When you fight, you're thrown into a small arena where enemies will spawn somewhere on the map. You will usually look at the minimap on the bottom right to see how many enemies are in the area. Talking about the enemies, there are only a handful of them. Most of the enemies are bandits that fall into 4 types, which are balanced regular enemies, the ranged but weak guys, the fast but weak female, and the big strong but slow ones. Bosses are one of the ones that have more variation, from fighting Gaara, Kabuto, and the legendary giant praying mantis. The game lets you lock onto singular enemies, and there's no way of switching between the enemies besides unlocking and relocking and hoping you get the right enemy. It gets annoying when enemies just hit you from behind or from far away because you're focused on a specific enemy. You do get some ways to defend yourself. One is to dash away. You can evade attacks by dashing away when you think enemies are going to attack, but if you get attacked, you could press the dash button as soon as you do get hit to substitute behind them and attack them. I do think this is a much better idea than just blocking, since you're always on the offensive. If you combo your enemies enough times, you could go into the Nine Tails mode. It gives you a big boost in attack and speed, and it will let you overwhelm your enemies. To spice things up a bit, you can do jutsus. You start the game with Naruto's 3 signature jutsus: the Shadow Clone, Sexy Jutsu, and the iconic Power Strike Jutsu. They couldn't call it the Rasengan because he hasn't learned it yet in the show, but they couldn't remove it because it's one of the main moves in the game. So they just renamed it and hope you didn't ask any questions. Each one had its use. Rasengan was good for single enemies to deal a lot of damage, Shadow Clones were versatile for big combos, and the Sexy Jutsu was used for crowd control, by stunning surrounding enemies with your sexiness. It however does not work on female enemies. Every time you use jutsus, you'll see a bar on the bottom left go up. This goes up depending on how long you leave the button pressed to show the power level of the jutsu. For the Rasengan, it will increase its strength. Over Shadow Clones, it will increase the amount of clones you can make. The different power levels had nothing to do with combos, but more with chakra management. On the top left, you have a bar that will show you how much chakra you currently have, with the health bar right above it. If you deplete your enemies, they'll drop some items. You can get chakra orbs, which replenish your chakra, virtual orbs, and items. Depending on that item, you can get different effects. You can pause the game whenever you want and use items. So if your health is low, just pause the game and recover all your health or even chakra. You can also pick up what the game calls active items. These are the throwable items. This is the items that allow you to hit enemies from far away, so it has its uses. But I barely threw them because that will be killing your enemies by throwing money at them. In this game, you don't have any currency, but a barter system. You can trade 9 shurikens for 1 firebomb, like trading 3 chickens for a cow. It's an interesting system to have you give up a lot of weak abundant items for a few more powerful ones. I didn't use this very much not because it wasn't useful, but because I'm a hoarder in games. Only used it because I wanted to test out the feature. To buy items you need to be in the Hidden Leaf Village. Besides the store, here you can save the game, leave, or visit the Hokage's office. Here you can get missions from a chair. There are two types of missions that the game does not differentiate between. Missions, which are used to advance the story, or side missions. Side missions are usually repetitive by just fighting or doing escorts, but they do have some fun premises to them, like the man who got his dice and cups stolen from him by monkeys. You beat them and you find out it was not stolen, but the guy lost a gambling game against the monkeys. Not sure if that monkey is impressive or that guy is dumb. You can gamble against the monkeys in a minigame, but I only found the game by chance in the overworld map. When you leave the village, you're put in the overworld map and you can travel around to go to your current mission. While traveling from town to town, there's a chance you'll get into a Pokemon encounter screen and have a random fight. They are a bit tense since the missions that require you to escort and protect goods won't recover its health between fights. Since the only way to recover health was by using items between missions, these fights are a nuisance unless you're trying to level up, but the game was not difficult enough for that. You use the virtual orbs to increase your max health and chakra, but more importantly, you can use them to buy skills. Bills to pay the skills. There are 4 types of skill chips you can buy. The first is Taijutsu, so it buffs hand-to-hand skills to increase attack, defense, or adding effects. The same can be said for ninjutsu chips, but this is for the jutsu. Special chips give you an extra ability like orb absorption, an extra clone, or Naruto's Uzumaki's barrage jutsu. You can even get a new swimsuit as a chip for your sexy jutsu that has a longer range and stuns them longer because it's sexier. The last chips are empty. Empty chips are used because if you fill up your skill plate with chips, it'll give you a bonus. Skill plates have a unique design, making it hard to fill them up with skills, which also have a big clunky design the better the skill. One skill that made my playthrough faster and smoother was the air dash, specifically for the parts with your platforming sections. It's only a handful of them, but the platforming in this game is clunky, so having more controls in the air is a blessing. If you're not doing platforms, you're going somewhere and sometimes you're going to be jumped by enemies. You can stay there and fight every enemy that comes your way, but since health items are the only way to recover health, it's easier just to skip over them, especially when you have a boss fight at the end of these stages. You would think if you skip all the enemies, then I will not be leveled up and will make it difficult to face some opponents. And you will be correct, but I have yet to talk about the most powerful thing of all, the power of friendship. In most missions, you have a teammate who will tag along and they are overpowered. You can sub them in at any time and they have no health bar. They can take as many hits without any issues and will stay on that map until you sub them out or their companion bar is depleted. Teammates have their own attacks and even jutsus that they can use, from Choji's expansion jutsus, Nenji's 8 trigram, and Kakashi's 1000 years of pain of shoving his finger up your butt. Switching to a teammate is so overpowering that even the bosses change their behavior and seem to be more aggressive or keep away. Once I beat Orochimaru with Kakashi, the game ends and there's not much to do after. You can replay the whole story again, and you get to keep everything from your last playthrough except for your health and chakra upgrades. It goes back down to how it started, and it's pointless to use your orbs for these. One new thing that you get is now that Kakashi and Gaara become pickable teammates in the side missions. In the end, this is a 3D beat 'em up with some light RPG elements. I do like that the game has no blocking and went into a faster paced tactic of dashing and using substitute. It also has some interesting mechanics with the item bargaining and skills with the skill plate. Sadly, the game is not difficult specifically with its teammate system, and the game's cut story makes it feel more like a demo, especially when I was done playing the sequel. Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles 2 was released a year later. This game from the beginning has an original overarching story. Naruto's heading back to the village when Kankuro shows up and is being chased by puppets. These puppets follow him from the sand village, and I'm just wondering how long these puppet strings are. Unless they're Bluetooth. The people behind us are looking for the spirit orb. They attack the sand village and are now attacking the leaf village since they believe they are hiding the last orb they are missing. As you get further along to the story, you learn that the people who are controlling the army of puppets are part of the Shirogane clan. They were able to create these armies of puppets by doing human experiments, and when they were exposed, their practices were outlawed. They try to fight back and were destroyed with a few survivors. To get revenge, they're trying to revive the master puppet that needs the 5 spirit orb, which is said to have the power to destroy the 5 hidden villages. I do like that the game has a story from the start, so you don't feel like you're doing just random missions without much of a goal. After the plot in general, it's fine. A typical world ending one, which is a bit odd for something that is a side or filler story. However, by adding the stories, they took away those cool CGI cutscenes from the first game. Everything is now with in-game cutscenes. But they do have the character portraits, which gives the game a little bit more personality. There are some good additions to the story side, but what about the gameplay? There are a few differences in the combat gameplay between the two games. You still have your combos, and they're similar to the last game, but they did a small change for jutsus. They got rid of the meter at the bottom that controlled how strong it would be. I don't think it made any difference in the last game, and it complicated the mechanic more than it needed to. Now you have the option to tap or hold, so you can tap for a single clone or hold and release for multiple. Enemies also have been improved. There are a few more enemy types, mostly with bandits and puppets. It's not a lot of new enemies, but there's more variety to them. One thing that was completely changed was the teammate mechanic. Instead of being the extra overpowered mode, it's another character you can swap to. I'm going to miss my easy mode, but it did make the game too easy. They now have their own health and chakra. I do like that some characters even have some interesting quirk to them, like how Gaara blocks most of his moves that are not in front of him automatically, like in the anime. Since the teammates are now their playable characters, they also have their own stats. There are also more stats that you can upgrade compared to just the health and chakra. It's a scream I rarely went to since the game is not very difficult like the last one. It's also character specific in that each character has to pick up their own virtual orbs to be used for their upgrades. I didn't want to use the other characters since they will pick up the orbs that I could use for Naruto since he's always on the team. Since they all have their own stats, they all have their own skill plates too. Everyone has a specific skill plate, usually being shaped to something iconic to them. Naruto has a Rasengan shape and Kakashi has their Sharingan eye. The eye shapes play out the same as the last game where you try to fit the weird skill shapes into the plates. But the skills are an item besides these blank chips. Since there are more characters, there are skills that only a few characters can use, and even some that are character specific. If the skill is an odd shape and does not fit the character's plate, you can expand the skill plate for them. You'll be buying most of the skills from the shop, and we even evolved from the barter system. We now have capitalism. Besides these two changes, everything is similar except for the throwable items. You can't buy throwable items anymore. They are dropped by the enemies that you pick up, and if you pick up an item while you have another, it drops the one you had on. This makes the item less important and forces you to use them so you don't waste them when you find another one. I do prefer this one over the other method as my hoarder mentality was now overcome by my efficiency side. It did add an incentive to explore the map now as that was something you could get on top of skills in the treasure chest. They put more effort into the open world since there are more here than the last game. Even with these treasure chests, the areas are pretty barren of anything. And while sometimes you do have to stick around and fight, you can still walk past enemies to get to your destination. Of course, we still have our overworld map that you can go from mission to mission, but it feels even less integral to the story since missions are outside of the main story mode. Every time you finish a story mission, you're put back into the main menu where you have to go back into story mode to continue, or you can go into missions. Here you can choose missions that you have unlocked by progressing the story, but I'm a bit disappointed that they don't have missions in the Hidden Leaf Village menu anymore. I can understand they don't want to tie it to the story mode, since now they want you to do them whenever, and it's the reason they kick you out the main menu when you complete a story mission. So you can go ahead and do any mission you unlocked. But I did like that in the first game everything was centralized into the hidden village, and you get assigned missions from there. Especially since some of the missions do have you going into the overworld map, and it just feels more natural to do it from the main village. It's a small thing that just felt a little odd, but there are a lot better things in this mission mode than the last one. Especially when they do give you a lot more missions with some written lore, which is nice. But in exchange, they got rid of the in-game cutscenes. Having more missions for no cutscenes is a trait I prefer. Missions are ranked by difficulty and you can complete a mission with any character you have unlocked. Another mode they added is survival. You do rounds of fight against opponents without recovering health and try to win without dying. it has different types of fights, and when you defeat one, you unlock a more difficult one. One thing you will notice here is that there's a playable character that is locked, and that is Sasuke. The game story takes place after the Sasuke retrieval mission where he leaves the village, so it does not make any sense to have him as a playable character in the story mode. He is a unlockable character. You can unlock him when you beat the story mode twice. He can be used in missions, survival, and the 2-player battles. You can face another friend in this game in a 2-on-2, but there are better Naruto games for that. There are actually 2 more characters you can unlock for this mode, but you need to do the last hidden mode. If you beat all the missions, you unlock Kakashi's story, which is a filler side story of Kakashi and Guy investigating the sighting of the Akatsuki. You fight against Itachi and Kisame a couple of times, and when you finish, you can play as both of them, but only in the 2-player mode. Even not much of a competitive player, this game adds something that is a dying mode in a lot of games: couch co-op. In the missions and story mode, you can have a second player press start and control one of the other characters and help you throughout the game. I think it's cool that the game allows you to do this even if the camera is not the best in this mode. Any game could be 10 times better with a friend. In the end, this is a good sequel to the first game. It has a better story by having a main plot and adding a lot more to the game's mechanic. It expands the roster, and more modes give the game a lot more replay value by themselves or with a friend. After playing both games, I enjoyed my time with them. These games are not what one would expect of a Naruto game. It's usually just fighting games, and I respect that they try to do something different. It's a 3D beat 'em up, but I do like how they integrated the show moves and combat into the gameplay, especially how they took out blocking for a more offensive strategy of dashing around and substitution jutsu. If you plan to play these games, I recommend skipping the first game, as it didn't do anything significantly better than the second one. They play very similarly and the stories are unique, so you don't need to play the first one to play the second. It doesn't help that the first game was butchered in the story presentation, which was a strong suit compared to the second game. If you want more forgotten animes, watch my Forgotten Dragon Ball Z games on PS2 video and subscribe. But as always, my lovely patients, I thank you so much for watching, and tune in next time.